you ever heard this expression? It's not what you make, it's what you keep that counts. This is really important when you're buying mutual funds. Let me define a couple of terms for you. An actively managed fund is a fund where the fund manager attempts to beat the returns of a given benchmark, like the S&P 500. Most funds are actively managed funds. The fund managers are paid a lot of money and they have huge staffs. And their sole goal every day when they come into the office is, I'm going to try to beat the S&P 500 today. Index funds, in contrast, just track the returns of a given benchmark. They own all of the stocks in that benchmark. So an index fund that benchmarks the S&P 500 owns those 500 stocks. The index fund investor is going to capture the returns of that benchmark less very low transaction costs every year. The actively managed fund investor may or may not capture the returns of the benchmark depending upon the performance of the manager. But here's what nobody tells you. There's a huge difference between pre-tax returns and after-tax returns. Actively managed funds report returns pre-tax, not after-tax. This makes a huge difference because one study showed that the average investor in actively managed funds only gets to keep 47% of the returns. But the average investor in a comparable index fund got to keep 87% of those returns. Why? Primarily because of taxes. Taxes are generated by high turnover. Actively managed funds have much higher turnovers than passively managed funds. When there's high turnover, taxes are generated, and the investors in that fund have to pay those taxes whether or not they actually receive any money from the fund. So keep this in mind when you're comparing returns. Ask to look at after-tax returns. If index funds and actively managed funds both reported after-tax returns instead of pre-tax returns, the whole world would invest in index funds. I hope you found this helpful. Thanks so much for watching. You can change the way you invest.